The Galactic Council chamber floated like a cathedral in the stars, a structure of crystal and light, orbiting a blue-green gas giant that shimmered below like an ocean. Inside, thousands of alien eyes turned toward the center of the chamber, where three small human figures stood beneath the glow of 1,000 suns. The air was thick with tension. The humans stood straight, hands clasped behind their backs, faces calm but pale. They were the representatives of Earth, Ambassador Tessa Calderon, Commander Alec Vance, and Lieutenant Myra Solas. They had crossed light years to be here, hopping to end a war before it began. At least that was what they believed. A heavy silence filled the room until it was broken by the sharp, clicking sound of the Karth Dominion's ambassador. He was enormous, his chitinous body gleaming black and bronze beneath the light. 6 crimson eyes blinked as he leaned forward, his mandibles twitching in amusement. "So this," he hissed through the translator, "is the species that would defy the Dominion." No one answered. The translator's voice, cold and metallic, echoed across the dome. The human ambassador met his gaze, steady and unshaken. "We came to talk peace," Tessa said quietly. Her voice carried further than it should have, clear and strong. "We came to build something greater than fear." Laughter rippled through the alien seats. It was a sound like stones grinding, like beasts snarling. The council, made up of dozens of races, scaled, feathered, silicon-based, and ethereal, watched with cruel curiosity. Humanity was the youngest species to enter the galactic stage, still new to the stars. To them, humans were children, fragile, reckless, arrogant. The Karth ambassador's mandibles clicked again. "Peace," he said almost tenderly. "There can be no peace between predator and prey." Commander Vance stiffened. "Then you're saying negotiation is pointless?" The alien leaned closer, his breath like steam. "I am saying you have nothing to bargain with. The Dominion does not share power. You will yield your fleets, your colonies, and your worlds. Submission is survival." Gasps rose from the crowd, not of shock but of amusement. The demand was brutal, and everyone knew it. The humans stood surrounded by thousands of species who thought themselves gods among stars. Ambassador Calderon did not blink. "Earth does not yield," she said. Her voice was soft but carried like thunder. It silenced the room. "Not now," she continued, her eyes burning, "and not ever." The chamber stirred, disbelief, anger, contempt. "You misunderstand your position," the Karth said, rising to his full, terrible height. "Your kind clings to a single system at the edge of the spiral arm. Your ships are toys, your weapons relics. You think courage will save you." Tessa took one step forward. "No," she said, "but conviction will, and you'll find out what happens when you push a species that has nothing left to lose." Silence pure and endless. The alien's mandibles twitched again, this time in rage. "Then humanity chooses death." Tessa's eyes were cold. "No," she said, "we choose freedom." Then she turned. Without another word, the 3 humans walked out of the chamber. The guards did not stop them. The doors sealed behind them with a hiss that echoed like a closing coffin. Outside, in the cold light of the station's corridor, Lieutenant Solas spoke first. "That's it then," she whispered. "They won't listen. They never were going to." Commander Vance's jaw tightened. "They wanted this war. They think we're weak. They think we'll bow." Tessa didn't speak for a long moment. She looked out through the transparent wall at the stars beyond. They glittered like shards of ice. In their reflections, she saw the faces of the fallen, the soldiers who had already died in border skirmishes, the colonies already burned. "They mistake restraint for weakness," she said finally. "They think our patience is fear." She turned, her expression steel. "Then we show them what patience has been protecting." When the shuttle departed the council station, 1,000 alien eyes watched it vanish into hyperspace. The Karth ambassador stared after it with cold satisfaction. "Let them run," he growled. "Their world will burn before their fleet can rise." But far away, back in Sol's space, humanity was already moving. In the hidden shipyards of Mars, great machines hummed to life. Forgemasters on Luna reactivated ancient orbital foundries, pouring molten steel into the frames of warships older than the Council itself. Massive drones ferried munitions to the outer colonies. On Titan, fleets that had lain dormant since the last solar war powered on. Crew members rushed to stations, alarms flaring red. Artificial intelligences reawakened from cold storage, their voices crisp and deadly. System activation confirmed, preparing strategic command interface. For years, Earth had been silent, quiet, humble, learning. The galaxy had mistaken that quiet for peace. It was not peace. It was preparation. Tessa Calderon stood on the observation deck of the Dauntless, flagship of the United Terran Defense Fleet. Below her stretched Earth, blue and perfect, the cradle of all their kind. She felt the hum of the engines beneath her feet, the heartbeat of a planet ready to defend itself. Peace talks failed, Commander Vance said softly, stepping beside her. They were never peace talks, she replied. They were demands dressed as diplomacy. He looked out at the growing fleet, ships assembling in neat, silent formations. Do you think we can win? Tessa's eyes stayed on Earth. We don't need to win, she said. We just need to make them remember. Far across the stars, the Karth Dominion prepared its invasion. They had conquered countless species before, burned worlds, enslaved billions. To them, humanity would be another footnote, another primitive race that dared to rise. They didn't understand, they couldn't. They didn't know what humans became when cornered. They didn't know the fire that came from fear, from grief, from love of home. They didn't know what it meant to fight for something worth dying for. As the Dauntless left orbit, its engines lit the night like a rising sun. One by one, the ships of the Terran fleet followed. Their hulls bore the names of lost cities, fallen heroes, forgotten wars: Yamato, Normandy, Invictus, Vengeance. Each ship was a promise, each name a reminder. And as they moved into formation, a single transmission echoed through every Terran channel, a voice, calm and unyielding. This is Earth Command. All fleets stand by for strategic mobilization. Peace talks have failed. The Dominion moves to war. We move to protect. We move to survive. The final words hung in the air like a vow. Humanity comes armed and ready. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the stars trembled. The sky above Mars was red, not from the planet's dust, but from fire. Colonists screamed as the first alien ships broke through the thin atmosphere, their hulls glowing like falling suns. The Karth Dominion had come, not to negotiate, not to warn, but to burn. The first blasts hit the outer domes of New Ares colony. Transparent alloy shields cracked like glass. Within seconds, the oxygen farms ignited, sending pillars of flame curling into the sky. The Dominion's fleet hovered above the chaos, their ships alive and pulsing, grown from some terrible biometal that shivered and breathed. Evacuate, evacuate! Voices shouted through the comms, but there was nowhere left to go. A young engineer named Sierra Holt watched from the ridge near the spaceport. Her family's shelter had already been destroyed. The heat from orbit burned her skin even through her suit. She saw the shadow of the alien mothership cover the horizon, blotting out the faint sunlight. She whispered a prayer, not for herself but for Earth. News traveled faster than light. Within hours, the United Terran Command received the reports. Mars had fallen. Luna's defense grid was breached. The Karth had struck first. In the command center beneath Earth's surface, the war room was alive with red lights and shouting officers. Admiral Harrigan stood at the center table, his face carved with exhaustion. "Confirm it," he ordered. "Confirmed, sir. Multiple colonies destroyed. Dominion fleets inbound on all channels." He looked up at the massive holographic display, red dots spreading like blood across the solar map. "How long until they reach Earth?" 72 hours, Admiral." Harrigan's jaw tightened. Then that's 72 hours to remind them who they're dealing with. He turned to his comms officer. "Signal the fleet. Dauntless protocol is in effect." Every soldier in the room went silent. Dauntless protocol, the command that meant no retreat, no surrender, total war. In the black of space, hundreds of Terran warships stirred. One by one, ancient hulls lit up as reactors roared to life. From the shipyards of Mars to the deep refineries near Titan, the United Terran Defense Fleet assembled. The Dauntless led them, a dark blade cutting through the void. Around it, carriers, frigates, and cruisers formed ranks in silent precision. The fleet's AI cores synchronized across thousands of kilometers, their combined voices forming a calm, digital chorus. All systems operational, fleet readiness at 99.6%, awaiting command. Admiral Harrigan stepped onto the bridge of the Dauntless. The massive viewing window stretched before him, showing Earth below, a fragile blue marble glowing against the dark. He raised his hand. All ships form battle line, activate defense grids, prepare intercept formations. The stars flickered as Earth's orbital cannons powered on, surrounding the planet like a ring of fire. Humanity had not built its weapons for conquest. They had built them for survival. And survival had just become war. The Karth fleet entered the system 3 days later. It arrived like a nightmare, a storm of organic warships that pulsed with light and bled energy trails. Their flagships dwarfed human battleships, shaped like titanic insects with armor that regenerated as fast as it was damaged. The Dominion believed no race could stand against them. They were wrong. When their leading vessels crossed Neptune's orbit, a signal cut through the vacuum. A human voice, calm, steady. "This is Admiral Harrigan of the United Terran Fleet. You have entered Sol space. Turn back or be destroyed." The Dominion commander laughed, his voice echoing across the comm. "You dare threaten us, ape? You think your fragile machines can harm the Dominion?" There was no reply, only silence. Then Harrigan gave the order. "Weapons free." The asteroid belt came alive. Thousands of hidden satellites and railgun platforms, long thought to be defunct mining stations, unfolded like mechanical flowers. Their cannons ignited with blinding light. The first kinetic slugs, each the size of a skyscraper, screamed across the void at a fraction of light speed. They tore through the lead ships of the Dominion Armada, shattering hulls, vaporizing armor, sending debris spinning into the darkness. Within seconds, the Karth fleet reeled in confusion. They had never seen weapons like this, machines of precision, not chaos. The humans didn't fire blindly. Every shot counted. Every impact was a message. We were ready. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Commander Vance watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. Direct hits confirmed on 9 enemy vessels. Their formation is breaking. "Keep pressure," Harrigan ordered. "Shift firing solutions. Bring the rail array online." The ship vibrated as the forward cannons locked onto new targets. Blue light poured from the barrels, humming like thunder. "Fire!" The shot ripped through the void, a glowing spear of metal and fury. It struck the Dominion's command cruiser, piercing its core. The explosion that followed was blinding, a sun blooming where no star should be. "Target neutralized," Vance said, voice trembling. "Good," Harrigan murmured. "Let them know Earth fights back." But the Dominion was not beaten yet. Their warships, wounded but furious, surged forward. Plasma bursts lit the darkness, slamming into human shields. Frigates exploded. Dozens of Terran ships vanished in fire. Sierra Holt, the engineer from Mars, was now aboard the Resolute, a smaller Terran vessel near Saturn. She felt every tremor as the ship fired its last missiles. Her hands shook, covered in grease and blood. "They're pushing us back," someone shouted. "No," she said quietly, staring at her monitor. "We're drawing them in." Moments later, the Dauntless gave the command. "Activate the black line." From beyond Pluto's orbit, something ancient awoke. The Leviathan array, a chain of planetary defense cannons buried in ice centuries ago, rose from the darkness. Its power core glowed red, fueled by the hearts of collapsed stars. When it fired, it didn't shoot bullets or beams. It unleashed gravity itself. Space bent, light curved. Karth ships were crushed like tin in the wake of impossible force. The Dominion fleet broke. The survivors scattered, fleeing into hyperspace, their once proud commander screaming orders that no one obeyed. And then the battlefield was silent again. Admiral Harrigan stood on the bridge, watching the wreckage drift among the stars. Smoke curled from his uniform sleeve, blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. Around him, his crew stared at the displays in stunned disbelief. "They're retreating," Commander Vance whispered. Harrigan nodded slowly. "They thought we were prey, they thought wrong." He turned to the communications officer. "Send a message to all ships." The officer hesitated. "What should I say, sir?" Harrigan's eyes hardened. "Tell them this was only the beginning." Far away in the shadowed halls of the Karth Dominion, panic spread like wildfire. Their fleets had been shattered, their commanders killed. In the council chambers of 1,000 alien races, voices trembled as they watched the footage, the moment the humans unleashed their fury. For the first time in galactic memory, the predators felt fear. And in the silent dark between the stars, the fleets of humanity moved forward, slow, steady, unstoppable. The war had only just begun. The Karth Dominion had never known fear. Until now, their fleets had ruled the stars for centuries. No rebellion, no uprising, no rival empire had ever stood against them. Every species that defied them burned. Every world that resisted was erased. But now their empire trembled. The humans had not only survived their invasion, they had destroyed their fleet at Neptune, crushed their flagship, and turned space itself into a weapon. The Karth had lost hundreds of warships in a single battle. It was unthinkable. And yet it had happened. For the first time, the Dominion's rulers gathered in silence, their chitin plates shivering in unease. Holograms of broken ships filled the chamber. Flames, wreckage, the cold faces of human soldiers staring into the cameras after the battle. Their technology was primitive, one general hissed. How did they strike so hard? Another's voice trembled. They hid their strength, they waited, they. Enough, roared the Supreme Regent. His mandibles clicked, furious. They are a single-world species, they cannot stand against the Dominion. But even as he spoke, his claws shook. Because deep down, even he could feel it. Something was different about humanity. Far across the void, the humans were not celebrating. They were preparing. In the shipyards above Luna, engineers worked without sleep. Sparks rained from the ceilings as new weapons were welded into place. Giant mechs were loaded into carriers. Fighters, drones, bombers, all rebuilt, rearmed, reborn. The victory at Neptune was only the first step. Now came retribution. Admiral Harrigan stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, staring at the stars ahead. The lights from the wreckage still flickered in the distance. He had seen victory before, but never like this. Never against odds so impossible. "Status report," he said. "All ships reporting green," replied Commander Vance. "Fuel reserves at 87%, reinforcements from Luna arriving within the hour." Harrigan nodded. "Good, it's time we bring the fight to them." He turned to the comms officer. "Transmit fleet orders. Operation Iron Sky is now in effect." The message spread across the network, reaching every ship, every soldier, every pilot. And across the fleet, hearts hardened. For the first time in history, humanity would strike first. The Dominion had retreated to regroup in the Verk system, an industrial stronghold surrounded by moons and asteroid fortresses. Thousands of ships guarded it, confident in their superiority. The Karth commander, a hulking creature named Scareth, paced across the bridge of his flagship. He had survived Neptune, barely. His pride burned hotter than his wounds. "They will not follow us here," he growled. "They are primitive, they will hide behind their world." But his sensors officer hesitated. "Sir, we're detecting warp signatures." "How many?" Scareth snapped. The officer looked up slowly. "Too many." Space tore open. Blue fire streaked across the stars as hundreds of Terran ships emerged from hyperspace, massive, angular, and glowing with deadly intent. The Karth fleet barely had time to react before Admiral Harrigan's voice echoed across the system, calm and terrible. "To all Dominion vessels, this is the United Terran Fleet. You brought war to our door, now we bring it to yours." Fire. The void exploded. Human railguns lit up the darkness, launching hypervelocity rounds that shattered the Dominion's front line. Missiles screamed through vacuum, trailing fire like falling comets. Fighter wings, sleek, silver, and fast, cut through enemy ranks like shards of light. Pilots shouted over the comms, hearts pounding, voices filled with fierce joy and terror. "Target down. Missile lock, missile lock. They're scattering, we've got them on the run." The Karth fought back with desperate fury. Their ships were alive, their weapons organic and self-healing. They swarmed the humans like hornets, spitting plasma and acid into the void. One Dominion cruiser rammed a human destroyer, the impact sending both ships spinning apart in a ball of flame. "Dauntless taking fire," Commander Vance shouted. "Shields at 40%. "Hold the line," Harrigan roared. "All ships maintain formation, focus fire on the flagship." The crew obeyed without hesitation. The Dauntless turned, her rail cannons rotating into position. Her hull shuddered as energy surged through the coils. "Fire." The main gun unleashed a blinding flash that split the stars. The round hit Scareth's flagship dead center, tearing it in half. The explosion lit the system for a full minute, bright as a sunrise. The Karth commander didn't even have time to scream. Across the battlefield, Dominion ships broke formation. Some fled, others fired blindly. But the Terran fleet moved like a machine, coordinated, relentless, merciless. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained of the Karth defense line but wreckage and drifting corpses. "Enemy fleet neutralized," said Vance quietly. "The system is ours." On the bridge, no one cheered. The silence was heavier than victory. Admiral Harrigan looked out at the burning remains. "Broadcast on open frequency," he said. The comms officer nodded. "Ready, sir." Harrigan spoke slowly, his voice steady but cold. "To all who can hear me, this is Admiral Harrigan of the United Terran Fleet. You struck at our worlds, slaughtered our people, and called it justice. But now, justice has found you." He paused, the stars flickered outside, reflecting in his eyes. "Tell your rulers, tell your gods, humanity does not bow, humanity does not break, and if you bring war to our home." He looked at the camera, every word like iron. "Then we bring war to yours." In the days that followed, the message spread across the galaxy. Broadcasts captured the human fleet moving through Verx, dismantling the Dominion's weapons, freeing alien slaves, and restoring order with terrifying precision. Other species watched in silence, some in awe, some in fear. For centuries they had believed humanity was fragile, a new race, untested, naive. But now they saw something different, something ancient in spirit, even if new to the stars. They saw fire. They saw resolve. They saw the unyielding will of a species that had crawled from the mud of a dying world, fought its own wars, destroyed its own gods, and survived. And they realized something chilling. If this was how humanity fought when cornered, what would they do when angry? Back on Earth, Ambassador Tessa Calderon stood beneath the old sky, watching the first sunrise since the counterattack. The light warmed her face, soft and golden. For a moment she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. "We did it," said a voice behind her, Commander Vance, exhausted, half-burned from battle. Tessa nodded. "We did, but they won't stop." He looked at her. "Neither will we." She smiled faintly, though her eyes were sad. "No, we can't afford to." The sun rose higher, painting the clouds crimson. To anyone else it looked beautiful. To her it looked like blood. She whispered to herself, almost too softly to hear. "They came to take our peace. We showed them our fire." And somewhere, far away, among the ruins of the Karth Dominion, the surviving aliens gathered in the shadows, whispering one truth that now echoed across every world. "Do not provoke the Terrans. They come armed and ready." The stars had learned the lesson too late. And the war was only beginning. The stars burned red where the Dominion had fallen. But the humans did not stop there. The war that began as defense had become something else, a storm rolling outward from Sol. Every human ship carried the same mission, the same unspoken promise: never again. No more Martian colonies destroyed. No more civilians burned alive under alien suns. No more surrender. Admiral Harrigan stood in the war room of the Dauntless, staring at the glowing map of the Karth Dominion. Thousands of red systems filled the projection, each one an enemy stronghold. Behind him, officers waited in silence. "Status," he said. Commander Vance spoke, his voice rough from too many sleepless days. "Fleet Alpha is ready to jump to Sector 9. Fleet Beta reports full strength near the Kevar line. Fleet Gamma still refueling near Titan's Gate." Harrigan nodded slowly. "An enemy response." "They're retreating," Vance said. "Scattered, their command structures collapsing, some systems already surrendering without a fight." Harrigan looked up, his eyes hard. "Then we keep moving, fast, before they remember how to be brave." The order went out. Across the fleet, jump engines flared. The void twisted and folded, swallowing entire armadas in white light. And just like that, humanity vanished from Sol and appeared deep inside enemy territory. The first target, Dravon's Reach, a fortress world at the heart of the Dominion. The skies of Dravon were black with clouds and ash. The planet was more machine than soil, its surface covered in vast metallic cities powered by enslaved labor. When the humans arrived, the Dominion barely had time to react. 3 Terran carrier groups dropped from hyperspace, and unleashed everything they had. Fighter wings roared into the atmosphere, their engines screaming. Orbital bombardments lit the horizon with pillars of light. Every strike was precise, clean, aimed at shipyards, power grids, and command centers. The alien defenders fought back, but their chaos betrayed them. The humans were coordinated, united, and relentless. Captain Yara Cade led the first wave of ground troops. Her boots hit the burning soil of Dravon's capital. She looked up at the alien citadel, its spires burning. "Forward," she shouted, voice crackling through comms. "Push to the tower, secure the command node." Her soldiers moved like shadows through smoke. Exosuits glowed with blue light. Rail rifles cracked in the distance. Every step they took echoed the same truth: the humans had come to end this war. Inside the citadel, alien generals panicked. "Their forces are too many," one shrieked. "They are just one system," another cried. How are they everywhere?" But the truth was simple. Humans didn't conquer through numbers, they conquered through will. Every soldier fought for home, for family, for survival. Every ship was filled with men and women who refused to die quietly, and that kind of fire couldn't be measured. When Captain Cade's unit reached the command chamber, the last Karth officer raised his claws and screamed, "You can't destroy the Dominion. You will burn as we burned." Cade aimed her rifle, calm and steady. "No," she said, "we already did." One shot, silence. Hours later, the Terran flag rose above the ruins of Dravon's Reach. From orbit, Admiral Harrigan watched through the viewport as the planet's defense grids shut down. The war map flickered. One more red system turned blue. Vance stood beside him, staring at the numbers. "That's 4 major systems in a week. The Dominion's collapsing faster than we thought." Harrigan's voice was low. "Fear spreads faster than war." He turned, facing his crew. "Signal all fleets. No civilian targets. We're not them. We take only what we must, but make no mistake, we finish this." News spread through the stars. On neutral worlds, alien leaders gathered in secret, whispering the same words over and over. "The humans are coming." Footage of the battles flooded every channel. Massive Terran ships blotting out suns. Armored soldiers landing like meteors. Whole fleets surrendering before a single shot was fired. To some, humanity was justice. To others, they were monsters. But everyone agreed on one thing: they could not be stopped. In the shadowed ruins of the Dominion's capital, Moon, survivors huddled in silence. Among them was a young Karth soldier named Tirak. He had fought on 3 worlds and watched them all fall. Now he sat in the dust, staring at a shattered communicator, listening to a human broadcast echoing through the static. "This is the United Terran Fleet. To all remaining forces of the Dominion, lay down your arms. The war is over for those who stop fighting. Continue, and there will be nothing left to save." The message played in every language, calm, cold, absolute. Tirak trembled. He had grown up believing the Dominion was eternal, unbreakable. But now, looking up at the dark sky filled with human ships, he whispered, "What have we done?" Back on the Dauntless, Admiral Harrigan stood alone in his quarters. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the engines. He looked down at the small hollow photo on his desk, his wife, his daughter, smiling in the sunlight of old Earth. They were gone now, lost in the first attacks on Mars. Every battle he fought, every order he gave, was for them. He closed his eyes, whispering softly, "You wanted peace, I'm sorry." On the bridge, the comms officer called out, "Incoming message from Ambassador Calderon, sir. Priority 1. Harrigan straightened, his voice steady. "Patch her through." Her hologram appeared, faint but clear. She looked tired, too many nights without sleep, too many speeches to frighten governments. "Admiral," she said, "the Council is breaking. Some species are offering surrender, others neutrality. The galaxy's afraid." Harrigan's jaw tightened. "Good, maybe fear will buy peace." She hesitated, "And if it does?" He looked past her image, out into the stars where thousands of Terran ships burned like embers in the void. "Then," he said quietly, "we remind them again." In that moment, far beyond the edge of known space, the Terran fleet advanced. Their ships moved like a tide, silent, disciplined, unstoppable. Every world they reached surrendered or fell. The Karth Dominion was no more. But the story wasn't over, because the galaxy had seen something it could never forget. A young species that refused to kneel, that met the darkness head-on and rose stronger for it. And in every alien capital, in every whispering council, the same question echoed in terrified hearts. If this is humanity's wrath, what will their peace look like? The war was over. At least that's what the galaxy told itself. The Karth Dominion was gone. Their ships, their leaders, their empire, all crushed under the iron will of humanity. What was once a power that ruled 1,000 stars was now dust drifting through space. But victory brought no peace. It brought silence. And in that silence, fear began to bloom. Across the galaxy, worlds whispered of the Terrans, the humans who came from a single fragile world near the edge of the spiral arm. Once dismissed as reckless, emotional, and naive, they were now spoken of in hushed voices. Tales spread faster than light. An entire Karth fleet destroyed in 3 minutes. An invasion crushed before it reached orbit. A human admiral who turned black holes into weapons. Some said humanity had no soul. Others said they were vengeance made flesh. All agreed on one thing: they were unstoppable. On the capital world of the once proud Karth Dominion, the ground still burned. Rivers of molten glass reflected the cold light of Terran ships orbiting above. The smell of ozone and iron filled the air. Among the ruins, Captain Yara Cade walked through the ash. Her armor was scorched, her weapon hanging loosely in one hand. Around her, Terran soldiers were helping alien civilians, feeding them, treating wounds, clearing rubble. It wasn't triumph she saw in their faces, it was exhaustion. A medic approached her, wiping soot from his visor. "We've secured the last city, ma'am. Survivors are cooperating." Cade nodded. "Any resistance?" He shook his head. "No, they're done fighting." She looked out toward the horizon, where the alien sun bled red through smoke. "Then it's time to start rebuilding," she said softly, "and praying we don't become what we just destroyed." High above the planet, aboard the dauntless Admiral Harrigan stood on the bridge. The stars stretched before him, endless and indifferent. Commander Vance approached quietly. "We've received transmission from 27 neutral species, sir. They're asking for meetings, peace agreements, trade deals, alliances." Harrigan didn't look up, and the rest. Vance hesitated. "They're afraid. Some have gone silent. Others are building defenses. They think we'll come for them next." A long pause filled the bridge. Then Harrigan said, "They're right to be afraid." Vance frowned. "Sir." Harrigan turned, his face hard but weary. "Fear keeps them honest. The Dominion made peace impossible because they thought fear was power. But we've learned, sometimes fear is the only thing that holds peace together." He looked out the window again. "They need to know we can end them, so they'll never make us prove it again." Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council world, chaos ruled. The council chamber, the same grand hall where the humans had once stood begging for peace, was now a hive of panic. Delegates shouted, wings fluttered, claws clicking, voices cracking with desperation. "They destroyed an empire," one screamed. "They used forbidden weapons," cried another. "They'll turn on us next." But amid the uproar, one voice spoke calmly. An elderly alien, thin and translucent, rose from its seat. "You all forget," it said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "The humans did not start this war. The Dominion did. The humans warned us. We ignored them." The chamber went still. "They asked for peace," the elder continued, "and we laughed. They asked for safety, and we demanded their surrender. We made them fight, and now we fear the fire we lit." No one spoke after that. Back on Earth, the skies were clear again. Cities that once trembled in fear now shone brighter than ever. The people had changed, older, harder, but proud. In a quiet room overlooking the sea, Ambassador Tessa Calderon stood before a crowd of leaders and soldiers. The war had taken everything from her: friends, family, innocence, but her eyes still held steel. "Today," she said, "the galaxy watches us." Her voice carried across the hall, steady and fierce. "They see our strength, they see our power, but they must also see our mercy." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Because if all they see is our anger, then we will become the monsters they already fear." She looked at the faces before her: veterans, scientists, politicians, children. "We fought to survive," she said. "Now we must learn to live." But not everyone shared her hope. In the shadows of the outer colonies, rumors began to spread. secret fleets forming, human admirals who spoke of expanding the borders, captains who whispered that peace was just another kind of surrender. For every human who wanted peace, there was another who wanted to make sure the galaxy never threatened Earth again. Aboard the Resolute, now a patrol vessel guarding the edge of Terran space, engineer Sierra Holt stood at her station. The stars shimmered outside, quiet and endless. She still remembered Mars, the fire, the screams, the day everything she loved was taken. She had joined the fleet for revenge, but now that the enemy was gone, she felt empty. Her captain approached. "You're quiet," he said gently. Sierra nodded, just thinking. "About what?" She looked out the viewport. "How it never ends. We won, but I don't feel like we did." He said nothing. He didn't need to. Because everyone in the fleet felt it too, the hollow ache that victory couldn't fill. Weeks later, in the ruins of the Karth capital, a group of alien children gathered around a human soldier distributing food. One of them, trembling, looked up at the towering figure and whispered, "Are you here to hurt us?" The soldier knelt, taking off his helmet. His face was tired but kind. "No," he said softly. "We're here so no one else will ever hurt you again." The child blinked, confused. "Even if we're not human." The soldier smiled faintly, especially then. But across the stars, other species weren't so sure. Entire governments debated whether to side with humanity or to hide from it. New alliances formed, not from friendship but from fear. And in the dark corners of the galaxy, where the light of peace hadn't yet reached, a single truth spread like wildfire. The Terrans don't start wars, they end them. In his private quarters aboard the Dauntless, Admiral Harrigan stood before a window, staring at the vast emptiness beyond. Commander Vance entered quietly. "Orders from Earth, sir," he said. "We're being recalled." Harrigan didn't answer. Vance hesitated, then asked, "Do you think it's over?" The Admiral's reflection stared back from the glass, aged, scarred, unyielding. "No," he said. "War never ends. It just waits for the next fool who thinks humanity can be broken." He turned to leave, his shadow long against the steel walls. "And when that day comes," he added, "we'll be ready." And so the galaxy watched as the Terran fleet returned home, giant ships gliding silently through the stars. They were victors, liberators, monsters, gods. No one could decide which. But every species remembered the same words, whispered across 1,000 worlds like a prayer or a warning. They came in peace once, you should have let them. The war was done, but peace had not yet come. Across the galaxy, the stars felt heavier. Worlds that had once burned bright now glowed faintly, their skies scarred by the shadows of warships. The Karth Dominion was gone, broken, buried, erased, and in its place stood something new. Something human. The fleets of Earth hung silent in orbit above conquered systems, black silhouettes against dying suns. Their engines were quiet now, their weapons cooled. But the galaxy still trembled, because silence from humanity was never peace. It was the sound of them deciding what to do next. The Galactic Council, the oldest assembly in known history, reconvened for the first time since the war began. Not on their homeworld, not in their grand citadel among the clouds, but on Earth. The invitation had not been a request, it had been an order. And they came. Vessels from 1,000 species descended through the pale blue atmosphere, passing over the ruins and reborn cities of humanity's home. The delegates were led into a chamber built beneath the mountains of Geneva, vast and bright, carved from glass and iron. It was not grand or gilded like their old halls. It was human, solid, unyielding, real. At the center of the room stood the Terran delegation. Ambassador Tessa Calderin, Admiral Harrigan, Commander Vance, the three who had spoken, fought, and bled for Earth. When the alien envoys entered, they saw no weapons, no guards, just the human flag hanging silently behind the delegates, a simple banner of blue and white, its edges scorched from the war. The representative of the Uren Hive stepped forward first, its crystalline body shimmering with unease. "Why have you called us here?" it asked through its translator. "The war is over. The Dominion is dead. What more do you want?" Tessa Calderin's voice was calm. "Peace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "You want peace?" hissed the scaled emissary of the Karth remnants, its tail lashing the floor. "You destroyed our empire. Tessa didn't blink. You destroyed our home first. Her voice carried like thunder. You burned our colonies, you slaughtered our people, and when we begged for peace, you demanded surrender. Now you come before us, still asking what we want. She leaned forward. We want what we always wanted, a galaxy that will never again make war upon Earth. Silence. Then Admiral Harrigan spoke, his tone low and heavy. The Council will disband the last of the Dominion's armies. All occupied worlds will be freed, and from this day forward, any attack on a human world will be considered an attack on all. The chamber erupted in noise, shouting, hissing, protests from every corner. You cannot dictate law to the galaxy, one delegate cried. Harrigan's eyes were cold. We already have. High above in orbit, the Terran fleet hung over Earth like a crown of iron. Massive ships, each larger than any alien dreadnought, drifted silently in perfect formation. Every delegate in that room had seen them on the way down, ships armed with enough firepower to erase entire civilizations. No one doubted the truth. Humanity wasn't asking, humanity was declaring. After hours of argument and trembling words, the chamber fell quiet again. A small alien, frail and pale, rose slowly. It was from a species that had no name in any human tongue, one of the first to be enslaved by the Dominion. It looked up at the humans and said softly, We accept. Its voice was thin, but it carried. You freed our worlds, you fought for those who could not fight. If peace must come under your hand, then let it come. The silence that followed was deep and long. One by one, the other delegates lowered their heads. The emissary of the Karth snarled but said nothing. The Uren hive flickered dimly and bowed its crystalline form. And at last the Council signed. It was not surrender. It was survival. Outside, as the final signatures were sealed, Admiral Harrigan stood alone on a balcony overlooking the Swiss valleys below. Snow fell quietly, soft against the cold iron of his uniform. Commander Vance joined him. They signed, Vance said. It's done. Harrigan didn't smile. Nothing's ever done. They'll think twice before crossing us again. Harrigan nodded slowly. Good, that's the point. He looked toward the horizon where the sunlight caught the distant towers of rebuilt cities. But fear fades, he said, and when it does, someone will test us again. He turned, his voice low. The difference is, next time they'll know what we are. Later that night, Ambassador Calderon returned to her home on the coast of the Mediterranean. The war had taken everything from her family, her peace, her dreams. Yet as she stood on her balcony, listening to the ocean, she felt something new stirring inside her. Not joy, not victory, something quieter. Hope. Humanity had survived the impossible. They had crossed the stars and faced extinction, and somehow they had won. But she knew victory came with a cost. The galaxy now feared them. And fear was a fragile kind of peace. In the far reaches of space, alien children grew up hearing stories of Earth. Parents warned them never to look toward the blue star at the edge of the arm, never to provoke the species that came from there. Why, the children would ask. And the elders would whisper, because they came in peace once, and when peace was broken, they came armed and ready. A century later, the mark of humanity could be seen on every star map, not as conquerors but as guardians. Their fleets patrolled the borders of dozens of worlds, keeping order where chaos had once ruled. They did not rule. They watched. They remembered. And whenever a new voice rose in defiance, whispering rebellion or conquest, the old ones would say, Do not wake the Terrans, they remember everything. Admiral Harrigan lived to see it all. He grew old beneath the same blue sky he had once fought to protect. When he died, they buried him not with soldiers but with builders and dreamers, those who made peace after fire. And carved into his stone were the words he spoke on the day the war began. They think our patience is fear. They'll learn what patience has been protecting. In the end, the galaxy did learn. It learned that humanity was not cruel, but it was not soft. It learned that Earth could burn, but it could never fall. It learned that peace in human hands was a promise written in steel. And under the cold glow of 1,000 suns, a whisper spread across time and space, a legend of a small, fragile world that defied empires and won. The Terrans came armed and ready, and the stars will never forget. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, but the memory of humanity never faded. The galaxy changed, new alliances formed, new species emerged, but the shadow of Earth still stretched across the stars. Every world that had once mocked or feared the Terrans now lived under the quiet peace their power had built. There were no wars large enough to shake the heavens anymore. No dominions devouring weaker races. No councils ruled by arrogance or greed, because everyone remembered. Everyone remembered the day peace failed, and humanity came armed and ready. The stories became legend. Children of distant worlds learned them in whispers before sleep. The tale of a blue world on the edge of the spiral arm. The tale of beings made of blood and fire, who stood against empires and won. They spoke of the ships, those terrible, beautiful machines that burned through the void like suns. They spoke of soldiers who fought through storms of plasma and walked through fire as if it were rain. And they spoke of the eyes of humanity, calm, sorrowful, and full of that strange, unstoppable thing called hope. No one who heard those stories ever forgot them. On a quiet moon near the galactic core, a group of alien scholars gathered around an old data archive. The vault was ancient, filled with records from the time of the Great War. They studied it not out of fear, but reverence. An old scholar, his skin silver and translucent, read aloud from a cracked holographic record. Humanity does not seek conquest. Humanity seeks survival. But if you threaten their home, you will learn what survival truly means. He looked up at his students, their faces glowing softly in the vault light. They could have ruled the stars, he said, but they chose instead to protect them. One young student tilted her head. Why? The scholars smiled faintly, because they remembered what it was like to be small. Far across the galaxy on Earth itself, the ocean still glittered blue. The world had changed, cities floated in the sky, towers reached into orbit, and rings of light circled the planet like halos. Yet beneath it all, Earth remained the same, the cradle of humanity, the heart of their legend. Every year on the Day of Remembrance, the skies filled with light as ships returned from across the stars. They came not to conquer, but to honor. Humans and aliens alike stood together beneath the same sky. Children read names of those who had fallen long ago, Martian settlers, Terran soldiers, lost colonies. The crowd fell silent as the last name echoed through the air. Then, as tradition demanded, the Earth fleet fired one round into the sky, a single beam of white light that pierced the heavens and vanished into infinity. It was not a weapon. It was a promise. In orbit, the flagship Dauntless II drifted among the stars. Its bridge was quiet. Its captain, a woman named Aria Holt, stared at the blue world below. Her grandmother, Sira Holt, had fought on Mars during the first invasion. Aria had grown up hearing her stories. The fire, the fear, the moment she realized humanity would never bow again. Now, standing where her grandmother once had, Aria felt the same weight of duty. Her first officer approached. "Command requests our presence at the Edge systems," he said softly. "There are reports of a new empire forming near the rim." Aria's jaw tightened. "Send a message." He hesitated. "What message?" She turned, her voice calm and cold. "Remind them who keeps the peace." On a mining world beyond the rim, the new empire's council sat in secret, plotting. They had grown bold, far from Earth's reach. They spoke of human weakness, how time softens memory, how peace makes people forget. "They're gone," their leader hissed. "Old ghosts from a forgotten age. The Terrans are myths now." Then the lights dimmed. Alarms screamed. Outside, the stars shifted, and a shadow fell across their world. The Dauntless II arrived in silence, massive and black against the planet's sun. Its hull glowed faintly with blue fire, and a single human voice spoke through every frequency. "This is Captain Aria Holt of the United Terran Fleet. You have violated the peace accord of the core worlds. Stand down immediately." The Council panicked. Weapons were useless. Their fleets, tiny, untested, crumbled before the Terran vessel's presence. There was no battle, no blood. The Empire surrendered before the first shot was fired. And across the stars, the old truth became new again. The Terrans don't start wars, they end them. Years later, when Aria Holt retired, she visited Earth one last time. She stood by the ocean, watching the waves crash against the cliffs. The same sea her ancestors had once crossed when humanity was still bound to one planet. She placed her hand against a memorial stone carved with a single phrase. "We came in peace, you should have let us." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of an entire species, of every life lost, every world saved, every vow kept. She whispered softly, "We didn't do this to rule them. We did it so no one would ever chain us again." A breeze swept across the sea, carrying her words into the horizon. In the centuries that followed, humanity became something more than a species. They became a symbol. To some, they were the keepers of balance. To others, they were a warning carved into the stars. But to the wise, they were a lesson, an echo of what strength and compassion looked like when bound together. For even at their mightiest, the Terrans remembered what it felt like to be powerless, and that memory kept their fire alive. On the outer edge of the galaxy, in a small alien classroom, a teacher told the story again. "The humans came from a single world," she said softly as her students leaned in close. "They were fragile, emotional, and imperfect, but when the stars turned against them, they stood together, and in their unity they became something unstoppable." One small child raised a hand. "Teacher, do you think they'll come back here someday?" The teacher smiled. "They never left." She pointed toward the night sky, where a faint line of light moved among the stars. A Terran patrol ship gliding silently, watching. And so, long after the fires of war had faded, the legend of humanity endured. They became the guardians of peace, the defenders of the weak, the ones who rose from dust and defied the gods of the stars. The galaxy had learned its lesson, written in blood and courage and steel. Never mistake their kindness for weakness. Never mistake their silence for surrender. Because when peace fails, humanity comes armed and ready.